From ayahuasca, energy healing, and kundalini yoga to starting a business helping former New Agers find Christ, this is Kelsey Reppert's story on this week's Spirit Answers podcast. Well, Kelsey, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. So before we get to your first experience with the supernatural or the paranormal, which from what I understand was an encounter with an energy healer, can you kind of give us a backdrop on what your spiritual upbringing was kind of in childhood?
Yes, I was raised Presbyterian. So I went to church every Sunday. I went to church camp. I did vacation Bible school. So I was raised in the Word and surrounded by Christians growing up. The issue came up when I was a teenager, and I couldn't really access Jesus. I couldn't access the Holy Spirit. I couldn't find it. It all seemed mechanical at church, like stand up, sit down, say this memorized prayer. And the Presbyterian church I went to was very stoic, right? So there was no one feeling the Spirit.
Right.
It was very, like I said, stoic. So I kind of fell out of church. I refused to go as a teenager. And then that led me down a very long and arduous spiritual path. I've always wanted to know about spirituality, and it always fascinated me. And I wanted to know God and the nature of God and what is truth. And so I, came out of my teens as an atheist. But then when I met the spiritual guru or healer, that's when my opinion changed, and I realized there's way more to the spiritual world than I ever realized. And so that's kind of how I got into that. So I went from being Presbyterian to an atheist to then open-minded to spirituality because I was having mystical experiences, and that led me all the way into consciousness movement and learning about how to raise your consciousness and Buddhism, and then I fell into some Hinduism, and I even converted to Islam at one point because my husband was Muslim, and you cannot marry a Muslim unless you convert. And because I didn't have a solid, strong faith in anything, really, I was just, believing a lot of other stuff other than the true word of God. So I converted, and I tried to be a Muslim and study, and I read the Quran and listened to what my husband had to say about it. I tried really hard to access Allah, God, and I still wasn't feeling it. And so after that, I fell even more into New Age practices and fell into shamanism and Native American spirituality, and thought that was the way and that was the path. And that also was not the right path, and I had to find out the hard way. And all of these experiences then brought me to Jesus, back to Jesus, my home.
That's incredible. And I feel like your experiences are pretty normal with a lot of people that are like you and me that had kind of delved into the New Age at one point. It kind of seems like we take this very roundabout way of realizing of almost kind of coming back to square one, but it's like we had to go through it in order to really understand what the truth is and kind of turn over every rock, so to speak. So I really relate to that aspect of your story, and I'm sure a lot of listeners will as well. I know in your testimony, you discuss how you had found this energy healer through your mom. So can you kind of take us through how did that happen? And had your mom relayed any kind of successes, quote successes that she had with energy healing?
My mom didn't really have any big story to share, but she did have friends who were in like new age movement and energy work. And so they were getting my mom, who is a Christian, they were kind of pulling her out of that and interested into metaphysical stuff. And, like if my mom had a pendulum at one point, and I don't want to throw my mom under the bus here, but so she just kind of got a little sidetracked, and
sure,
which is understandable because I was completely sidetracked and derailed by metaphysical spirituality. So it didn't really do a whole lot with her, but her interest in it, kind of opened the door for me, and I'm not blaming her by any means, just to make that clear.
So at this point then, by way of this, by way of your mom telling you about this person, can you kind of take us through what happened in this encounter with the energy healer?
So in university, this would have been around like 2003. It was probably earlier than that, 2002 maybe. I was depressed. I was a little overweight. I wasn't really fitting in at the school I was going to, and I was feeling a little lost. And so my mom took me to this guy who she said could blow light on you and heal you. And I thought, well, that sounds crazy, because at this point I had no spiritual belief at all. So I thought, well, that sounds crazy, but my mom's trying to help me. So I agreed to go. And on the way to this session, it was a 2-hour drive, and a friend of mine actually bailed on signing a lease agreement, which she had promised she was going to sign, and I had already signed. Wow. So I was like in panic mode, just like, oh my gosh, how on earth am I going to make rent? Because I was counting on her to pay half of it. And so I was just under a lot of stress and panic internally. And then I show up to this session, and he tells me to lay down on the bed, and he blew on my face, did a few things with his fingers, and I sat up. Well, and when he blew on me, I saw these lights, and they were very, very bright and very piercing. It felt like it was going into my cells. And so I sat up. It was only 2 minutes. I sit up, and the session's done. We said a few sentences, and I get up and I leave. But what I noticed when I sat up and when I left was this panic, anxiety that I had, and that depression that I had. It was gone.
Wow.
The contrast prior, because I walked into this session wanting to cry because I was upset about my friend. Mm-hmm. And then leaving, I was so free and so light. And so for me, the contrast was wow, this is real. This is legit.
Yeah.
And so that, of course, made me want to see this guy again. So the next time he came to Columbus, Ohio, he was giving a talk at a metaphysical spiritual center. And so I went to that talk, and it was there where he singled me out, and he had his people tell me that he offered me a scholarship, and I could go to Las Vegas to his center and work with him. So that's how that started.
And I just want to highlight too, like it'd be one thing, I think, to see these lights and have this incredible encounter with like the metaphysical for the first time in your life. I think that in and of itself would be spectacular. But to combine that experience with the relief of your depression, I think that's a just incredible. I mean, what an incredible experience right there to have both of those things happen. And so I think for somebody who had never, you had been struggling with depression, and you had never, like you had stated, you had never really you didn't have spiritual beliefs at this time. I'm sure that this was a very, very powerful experience for you.
Well, yeah. And this experience and others with this guru who is a mystic, it's very seductive and deceiving, because like after this experience, I lost 20 pounds without trying. I was legit happy again. Like I was on fire. I was so excited for life. And like, I realized like I'm not happy at school. So I dropped out of university and freaked out my family. And ended up going back and finishing, but I dropped out for a semester. And I went to Vegas and I studied with this guy, and because he would have people come to his center and do retreats. And so I was just there kind of like basking in all of it. But it was very exciting. It was very new. Like the more I worked with this guy, I could start to see energy like radiating off of people. And so it was just like, I was fascinated by this mysticism. And it was almost like a drug, like I just wanted to learn more and more and more and more and more and more and more. And which is why, when you hear more of my story, why like I did certain things, because I was just like I completely trusted this guy. I thought he was legit a healer. I thought he was a good person. And then since I've been saved, I have completely changed my opinion on that. But
yeah, and we'll definitely get to that here in a little bit. As far as more like those experiences we're going, like the metaphysical experiences, the supernatural experiences, were you doing anything yourself then to provoke these experiences, or do you think a lot of it just had to do with being near this, the spiritual guru?
Initially it was all connected to him. He had this elaborate story that we were in lifetimes together, and he just, I mean, I think you saw in my testimonial video where like once he was telling me about a past life of ours, and as he's telling me this story, his eyes started glowing like neon purple.
That's crazy.
And so like in my naive nature at the time, I thought, oh, that's confirmation that this is true, right? And that's one out of two crazy reincarnation stories that he told me where I had received confirmation. Another time, he told me that I was his daughter in a past life in the late 1800s. We were living up in Massachusetts, and he told me our names, and there are a lot more details to the story, but I got curious one day, and so he had told me that him, the father, had written a book, a medical textbook. And so being curious, I got on websites, antique bookstore websites to find this book, and I actually found it.
Wow.
And I had entered in my credit card information and went to click purchase, and my whole house, it was nighttime, the power just went out and went boom, my computer turned off. It was pitch black. And then, you know, the power came back on. And mind you, no one else's power went out. There wasn't a storm or anything. This was completely supernatural. Power went off. And when I tried to find the website again in the book, I couldn't find it. And again, I thought, oh, this must be real. God doesn't want me to dig into the past. Because this guru, he would always say, like, the past doesn't really matter. Like, don't worry about your past lives. That's what he would tell his students. He'd say, don't worry about your past lives. Just focus on this life. And so I thought, oh, this just means I shouldn't dabble in, you know, a former life. But now I know that reincarnation isn't real. And I truly believe that these supernatural experiences regarding these stories that he told me were just either sorcery or just, I don't know. I can't really explain it, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as kind of where it started to go then with this guru, I know at one point you mentioned in your testimony that you had a darkness come out of you. Can you kind of lead us up to what happened in this particular instance when a darkness came out of you? And was this something that you felt like you had initiated, or did it just happen?
This was spontaneous. And I was in my bedroom up in Ohio, and this was kind of another reason, confirmation why I trusted this guru, because I mean, I thought he was healing me, and maybe he was, but I mean, this is the deception. So I'm laying in bed, and this, like, I start to like sit up, and I like make a loud groan. I'm like, ah, and this like darkness came out of my chest, and it like swirled around the room and then flew out the window.
Wow.
And yeah, and it freaked me out.
I can see why.
And I went and I grabbed my phone and I tried to call him, the guru. I'm not going to use his name because I just don't want to get that, you know, I don't want to evoke his name.
Sure.
But I called my guru, and then I looked down and I saw that like the cord wasn't attached to the wall. You know, this was, you know, back in, I don't know, 2003 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
So the cord wasn't attached to the wall. And I realized I was like in a lucid dream. And I shook my head. I woke up and I was still sitting up. I reached down, grabbed my real phone, which was a cell phone, and called him. And I told him what happened. And he, you know, he's like, you're fine, whatever. So again, this was another experience that was like confirmation that this guy could be trusted, that he is a good person. And it's just like one little thing, one little blip in my story.
Yeah. And at this point, I know in your testimony video also, you talk about how you started to then see energy, you started to see ghosts and know when ghosts were present. Can you kind of take us through some of that there? Like how did you see a ghost? Was it kind of like how you see it in the movies? What was that like?
Well, I started to develop a sensitivity to knowing when spirits were present. Okay. Now, I have since, you know, since I've been saved, I have a different perspective on it all. But at the time, I thought that I was just like developing more gifts, you know, like the more that you awaken your consciousness, the more gifts, like psychic gifts that you can receive. And abilities that you will receive. And so I thought this was a gift. And like spirits will touch me. Sometimes they'll like pet me. Like they just touch me. Like sometimes I'll be laying in bed and they'll touch me from underneath the bed. I don't see them as often. If I do see them, they're like as silhouettes. Sometimes lights will flicker, which is confirmation, or was confirmation for me that what I'm seeing is real.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I have a few stories of when I was in Indonesia, and my ex-husband was telling me a story about this particular ghost in Indonesia, and how like when you repeat this chant, it will manifest. And he was just telling me this story. He wasn't actually trying to manifest it, but through the telling of the story and saying the chant during the story, this like Casper like ghost like flew in the room and swooshed between both of us and behind me. So I've seen some kind of Casper ghost as well. And that was a little terrifying. But what I now know, or what I think I know, is that all of these like pettings, these aren't like, my grandmother petting me, and this isn't, angels petting me. I mean, it could be, but I'd rather err on the side of caution, and I think that maybe I had been having demons follow me around.
Yeah, great point. And we actually had on the podcast, his name is Mark Hunneman. I'm not sure if it's already aired yet when this episode will have aired, but he has a fantastic book taking a look at the ghost phenomenon through a Christian lens, and it's called Seeing Ghosts Through God's Eyes. And he would definitely agree with your assessment there. I would agree with you that it probably wasn't ghosts that you were experiencing at the time. But it really fits the mold of what you've been talking about, which is that, how deceptive these experiences can be. And when we're going through them, especially, when we don't have the knowledge of and the truth and understanding of truth, it's just the fact that you're seeing something so incredible or experiencing something like the supernatural, I think can be very blinding on one hand. And also I think it can be very comforting, because you're getting confirmation that there is something more to life than just this physical side of existence. So I think it's very, very hard to see through all of that when you're going through it, because again, it's just these are some incredible experiences, and I think that they really fill a spiritual void that I think a lot of us have, especially like in the West. And so I just again, I can definitely relate to what you're speaking about as it relates to these encounters.
Yeah. I mean, it's so fascinating. It was so exciting. And when you do realize there's more to reality than what meets the eye, like you just want to know more and
Exactly.
more and more, which is why Gnosticism is so enticing for people, because you feel like if you can just read one more thing, or learn one more thing, or say one more mantra, or do one more yoga pose, you're gonna like achieve like gnosis, like divine knowledge, where you will be like God. And
yeah,
it's like this chase forever.
yeah, and it's like you just never get there. You think that you think that you see like the light at the end of the tunnel. You think that you're gonna finally get the knowledge that you're looking for, and everything's gonna be wrapped up in a nice bow for you, but it never happens, and you're always on this never-ending chase. And it feels good when you get that next piece of information, but it never satisfies you. There's always something else that you need to learn. There's always something else, on like the grass is always greener on the other side, so to speak. There's always something better and more enticing, or some kind of knowledge out there that you haven't been able to grasp yet. So I think that ties back, like you were saying, to Gnosticism. And Gnosticism, of course, now it's really the New Age movement. So at this point, then, did you were you starting to activate some of these experiences on your own through like certain actions, like these supernatural experiences, or were a lot of them just seemingly happening to you because you were in association with this guru?
A lot of them happened because of my association initially.
Yeah.
Because I was like 20 when I met him. And so I was still very naive, moldable. So I was just learning from this guy who I thought was, amazing mystic who healed me. So through my proximity with him and doing the practices that he recommended, because he would teach about, which I now know is sorcery, but he would teach about earth, water, air, space, and fire. And he would teach how to activate the elementals with signaling. He even wrote a book about it. But so I was learning all these things, and I would be playing with the energy, like at night before bed. I would just play with the energy in the space and watch it being manipulated with my hands. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just playing. And that's kind of like what he taught. It was just to like play with life and play with energy. And but really it's just it's witchcraft and it's sorcery. And so I did yoga, I did spiritual retreats, and as I got older, I had a few bad things happen in life where my marriage didn't work out, and that kind of like propelled me into another depression, which I needed healing from. And so I turned to shamanism and Native American spirituality, and that really like rips the veil out. And I got real deep into the spiritual world. So it started off with my proximity to him, and then you just keep searching for the answers, you keep digging deeper, and then I was pretty much swimming in like outside of this reality in another reality for a good maybe year of my life recently. So
during this time, when these experiences were happening, I guess over the course, like you were saying, of several years at this point, what was your communication like then with your family, as it relates to these experiences and what you were doing? Were they more open-minded, or did they kind of shut you down when it came to these experiences? What was going on there?
I had a cousin and who tried to like ask questions about my guru, and I was actually under a spell, and he had me under a spell. He called it sacred silence, and I just trusted that. And so anytime someone would say something about him, I would become really offended, which is like cult-like behavior. And I wouldn't like tell them that I was offended, but internally that's how I felt. My parents, they met him and they even went to a retreat with him. So it seemed like everything was fine. So my parents supported it because they saw me as happier at the time.
Okay. So at this point, they weren't really questioning your experiences, but they just kind of let it. They were okay with them happening because you were happier and didn't really ask you too many other questions.
Right.
Wow. And also like just because you had mentioned before that it was kind of like, it seemed very similar to cult-like behavior, to what was going on with the guru. Did you notice then that it was very hard for you to have friends outside of that circle of people with the guru?
No, see, he's all about like freedom. And so like, there's no like, you have to stay working with him. But with me, he took a particular interest in me, and he had done some magical things. And so for a good like 17 or 18 years, I thought this guy was a good man. I thought he was my mentor. I thought he was a healer. And then when I was going through my shamanic phase and where I was like healing myself with psychedelic plant medicines, I actually went to a shamanic healer, and I asked her to look into the guru. I don't know, I was just like feeling some doubt about him. And so she did, she would drum and go into trance, and where she would be able to kind of look at my spiritual landscape, so to speak, to see what's going on. And she saw that through him, there was this entity following me around, and this entity was glowing like the moon. And I know this isn't Christian, and I get it. This is just part of my story. So,
yeah, no problem.
So this entity was glowing like the moon, and when we think about where the moon gets its light from, well, it's taking light from the sun. So it's kind of like a vampiric energy. That's how I imagined it. And she said that this entity was following me everywhere, and her spirit guides removed it. And I kid you not, after that session, I was free, and I was able to mentally see this guy, this guru, for who he was, and he was a vampire. Like, I don't know how, and I can't explain it, but through me being connected with him in some kind of spell, not only did he spiritually brainwash me, but he violated me, all in the name of spirituality. And I can't prove it, but I think that he was like sucking, my energy, or some people call it your prana or your chi or whatever. He was like sucking this energy and probably using it to perform his magic. And he probably wasn't just using my energy. He was probably siphoning off of a lot of people he so-called healed, so that he would have this witchcraft power plugs. I don't even know, but this is how I imagine it. And so he would get more and more power to keep making money and doing what he was doing, deceiving people. So
yeah, then that reminds me of other, like energy healing practices where you go and see an energy healer, and all of a sudden you're cured of like I've heard of people being, quote, cured of a porn addiction, of alcohol addiction, just by seeing an energy healer, or someone that's using some kind of mysticism in order to quote help somebody. So I just think that that's interesting that how all these things kind of come together. But another facet that we need to keep in mind is that with a lot of these supernatural experiences, as they relate to like the new age and like the paranormal, it's the people that go to these healers, they are, again, quote, healed, but it's almost like applying a Band-Aid to the person. It doesn't really change the thought patterns of the person or their heart, so to speak, or the way that they view the world. So it's very likely, and this seems to happen a lot, I think almost every time, when people are healed, they tend to kind of find themselves back in the same scenario again, and the same addictive behaviors or the same obstacles keep presenting themselves in their lives. So I think it just kind of speaks again to the deceptive nature of all this, and how it really ties into like there's a good aspect, which is the healing, but is it really healing you? So it's just very hard to discern that.
Right, I agree. And all of my experiences that kind of freed me from, because I had a few actual spells and voodoo put on me. So, and I was like healed from it, not in a Christian way. And so
Mm-hmm.
I put it all at the foot of the cross. I feel like I had prayed my prayer to Jesus for help, and then I was healed shortly thereafter from that shamanic healer. And I feel like it's all God's work. Like the journey, the path that I had to go down, like it all happened as it did, and I'm okay with it happened. And I got hurt more times than I got healed. That I can be very assured of. So thinking that you're gonna go to these like ceremonies, where a lot of people drink ayahuasca and mushrooms to have these like healing experiences. Yeah, you might have a healing, but then you might also have sorcery put on you by the shaman, or you might have demons attached to you through opening some kind of portal. There's a lot of bad things that can happen with these healing practices. And for everything that I cannot explain, I just leave it at the foot of the cross. But you're right. I did not, I didn't repent about anything. I didn't have a change in heart. I didn't change my lifestyle. I was just kind of more or less like in shock that for 17 years. So I went through a process of shock, like, holy cow, what did I get myself involved in? I can't believe, like, I even moved to Las Vegas to be close to this guy. Like, you heard the one story of where he took a knife and cut me open, but it was like supernatural. Like, it sounds crazy.
Yeah, but you weren't hurt by that.
No, but that's how much trust I had in this guy to let him take a butcher knife and stab me. Like, that's major trust.
Yeah, no
and
kidding.
then to realize that he is of the devil and he's a black magic sorcerer, like, it just blew my mind. And so I'm pretty good now, but I'll tell you what, for months, it was a lot of like digesting and processing, and it's really sickening actually to feel like everything that you went through was a lie.
Yeah, 100%. And can you kind of take us through then, like, as you were having these experiences with the guru and with this shamanic woman, how then did you transcend what you were going through and kind of turn towards Christianity? How did that process work for you?
Well, nothing was working.
Yeah.
So, my husband left me with my 3-year-old baby. And so that was in 2019. And so then that just kind of like pushed me into a deep depression. And here I was, I was a spiritual life coach. I was doing all the things. I was teaching the prosperity gospel. If you can just think it into existence, it will manifest. Word of faith movement, which is all blasphemy, or heretical. And so I was teaching all this stuff, and it wasn't working for me. And so that was another hard thing. So not only am I going through depression because my husband left me, but here I am teaching things that aren't working for myself. So that was kind of something that was really heavy on my soul. And so I turned to ayahuasca. I drank ayahuasca 8 times in like the course of 4 or 5 months. It was a lot. And have you ever done ayahuasca? Do you know about it?
I've never done it. I know very, very little about it.
Okay, well, it is the most powerful psychedelic on the planet. And it has its own spirit, and they call it Mother Ayahuasca. And this spirit, like, pounds you, like, you're purging into buckets, you're vomiting, everyone's vomiting around you. But the concept is that you're, like, purging out the darkness, so to speak. A lot of people have beautiful divine revelation under this medicine. And anyway, I drank a lot of it, and it tastes vile. And to go into this psychedelic state, like you're not in control. The spirit of the medicine is in control. The spirit will show you what it wants to show you, and you're just along for the ride. And it's not easy. It's actually quite terrifying. But I just wanted to heal. I just wanted to feel better. And so I drank it again and again and again. And I did all these ceremonies. And yet I'm still struggling, or I was still struggling. And that's what took me to Jesus. Finally, after almost 2 decades of being a Buddhist and a Hindu practitioner and a yogi and reading everything I could about consciousness and manifestation and law of attraction, which, by the way, the book The Secret, which is all about the law of attraction, that lady, Rhonda Byrne, she also was a student of my guru. So
that's crazy.
Yeah. Anyway, so none of this stuff worked. Nothing that I was teaching. Law of attraction didn't work. I mean, it does to a certain degree, but it wasn't truly working in my life. And all this plant medicine that's supposedly healing didn't work. The shamanic healer who did the trances, while she did break some spells, like, my life wasn't improved. It was just, now I could see things for as they were. And so I literally had nowhere to turn except to Jesus. Like, I had exhausted all of the spiritual possibilities. And I was just like, Jesus, help me, please. Like, please, please, please. And I prayed so earnestly. And I had no idea that one prayer was, like, going to completely shake up my life and, like, really shake up my life and change me forever. But
Yeah.
He's so powerful.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. What happened with the prayer then?
Well, nothing happened well, I say nothing, but it's hard to understand what's going on when you're in it.
Right.
But hindsight, you can kind of see how the dominoes fell. So nothing really happened, although I did that shamanic healing with the girl who did the drum trance. And I was freed from that spell very soon after that prayer. And then it was about 6 weeks later, I had flown down to Florida, where I live. And that's when I heard God tell me, you can trust the Bible.
Wow. And there's a couple of things that I think about with that. One is that you had cried out to Jesus before this communication with God had happened, that he had told you that you can trust the Bible. And I want to highlight that because so many times when I hear people's stories, it's really not until they have, with their own free will, decided that everything that they've been doing is not enough. It's not working, like you were saying. And they're ready to go ahead and give, a relationship with Jesus a try and give Christianity a try. And it's by God giving us that, being patient with us and not forcing himself on us and waiting for us to come to that realization on our own. It's usually when the breakthrough happens. And so I just think it's absolutely incredible that you had cried out to Jesus. And yeah, there was a period, there was a waiting period kind of there, but eventually you got your answer after you took an action. So that's absolutely I just love that happened. And I just really, it just speaks to God's character and his patience for us, and letting us have our own free will of do we want to choose him and his ways and a relationship with him, or do we want to go our own way? And I also wanted to just ask you about how you had that knowing then. Was it an audible voice, as some people say that they have when they hear from God, or was it just a knowing? What was that like for you when you heard that you can trust the Bible?
Well, it definitely wasn't my own thought. It was not like a voice that I heard speaking outward in. It was like a voice in your head,
Yeah.
where it could have been my own thought, except I know for a fact it wasn't, because I didn't trust the Bible.
Yeah.
I had been, well, that's what we're brainwashed, right? Like
right.
when you go in through Gnosticism and you're reading all of this stuff and you think you're learning, you pick up these little things here and there that the Bible isn't trustworthy. It's written by men and is filled with error. King James was a horrible person, so therefore the Bible is a horrible Bible. There's just a lot of fake news about the Bible out there, and so like it's a little deceptive. It might have a little bit of truth. Like I do think, I'm not a scholar on this, but I do think King James wasn't the best person. So there's like a little bit of truth, but it's all just to like steer you away from the Bible. And it's funny. It's not funny. It's terrifying. But New Agers, like people who are into the love and light movement and raising their energy, and nothing is bad. Everything is just one love. And if we can just love one another, we're going to heal the planet, right? But that's not what happens. And the voice in my head just said, you can trust the Bible. And it was so simple, and it was so clear, and it was out of the blue, seemingly. And it was just like a weird thought for me to have.
Yeah.
And I remember getting up and just kind of looking around and being really perplexed. And then that propelled me into actually buying a Bible. And I randomly found Doreen Virtue on the internet at the same time.
Wow. And it's just incredible.
And what she's been up to lately. Doreen Virtue was a former New Ager who made millions selling tarot cards and talking about angels and so forth. And then she was saved. And so now she's teaching about the dangers and pitfalls of the New Age. And so here I am, like literally in the thick of shamanism and witchcraft. Like I was becoming a witch and I didn't even know it. Because that's how deceptive and chic, being a yogi and activating your kundalini and becoming like a mystic. It's all very, nobody is going to tell you that that's witchcraft unless they're a Christian.
Right.
And they probably don't even know it's witchcraft. Like nobody uses that word, actually. So I didn't even know I was falling into witchcraft and sorcery and divination and all this stuff. I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I knew what I was doing, but I clearly didn't. So, yeah.
I just want to go back to that part too, when you had that audible voice, because I and not to make this about me, but I can relate to that really well, actually, as it relates to the podcast, because I had been praying about doing this podcast for several months and thinking about it and just asking God if this is what he wanted me to do. And, I had thought that this is what he wanted me to do, but I wasn't sure. And, like I said, several months had passed, and there was just one moment I was having a hard day. I just kind of broke down and I was praying about it. And I asked God, and I said, do you want me to do this? this podcast. And I heard an audible voice in my head, and it was not my voice. It was just it was a man's voice. It was very clear. And it was not scary at all, which is interesting to me, because you would think that if I were to have, if I heard a voice, an audible voice, either in my head or outside of my head, that I would have been afraid in that moment, but I wasn't. It was like, it was a completely normal experience. And I just heard the voice say, do you want to do it, as it relates to the podcast? And that is something that gives me further confirmation as well, that it wasn't me, because I would have never answered myself like that. Like, I never would have asked myself a question as a response to my question. So I just wanted to say that, because I can really relate to that experience. And I just think it's absolutely incredible that God, I think he knows exactly when to speak to us, and he has his perfect timing. And he knows exactly the right way to communicate with us, that will give us the it will be the best experience for us in that moment. So I just really appreciate you sharing that. And I just think it's awesome that, we both have had a similar experience as it relates to an audible voice.
Yeah. And just to piggyback off of that, like, that is exactly what I needed to hear. I've read the Quran. I've read, the Buddha's textbook. I've read all of it except Bible for 20 years. And so when I started to read the Bible again, I was blown away. I remember I'd just be flipping through it, and I didn't start anywhere. I would just flip around, and I was randomly finding passages about sorcery and divination and witchcraft. And I was just being like convicted in what I was doing. It was like I was just again and again being convicted of my sins, that some of them I didn't even know were sins. And that is exactly what I needed to do. I needed to read the Bible. I just had to open the book. It was so simple, and that's all that God had to do. I've seen so much like supernatural stuff. I've got stories for days, right?
Yeah.
It could really make you question your reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But he didn't need to give me like a big spectacle. It was just, a small voice in my head. You can trust the Bible. That's all I needed. And then if my life from last year to now is like completely different. I'm a different person now.
Yeah. And that kind of speaks to you what the Bible talks about too, which is that you'll know a person by their fruit. And it also speaks to what we were talking about before, which is that this is a completely different experience for you than when you were having those, again, the quote, healings from the energy healers. It sounds like to me that this is not a Band-Aid. This is not just a cover-up experience. This is something that has completely changed who you are, the way that you view the world, and your really like your spiritual and emotional DNA.
Completely. I am such a Jesus freak now.
Yeah.
I live to like bask in the Holy Spirit. I talk about Jesus with everyone. I've lost a lot of friends because of that, or people have distanced themselves from me, but I am just so excited to share the good news and the gospel with people. And sometimes I have a little bit of imposter syndrome where, the devil will tell me, oh, you haven't been saved long enough. You haven't read the Bible enough times to be able to even be public about the gospel. But I know that's just the devil like trying to shut me up. And so I keep pushing that away. Like, I may not be a theologian, I might not be a scholar yet. However, that doesn't mean I can't share my story and hopefully help others who are trapped in the new age see the true light, the real light, the light of God. And I keep just, I've heard other voices as well in my head from God. And one of them is to do missionary work. But my mission is to save New Agers because I'm qualified. I'm qualified to help people realize why their beliefs are faulty and why the gospel is true. I do feel like I'm qualified, because Christians who've never been in the New Age, they can't even understand the psychology that these people and the spells that these people are under. They can't get it at all.
Right.
And actually, can I read Isaiah 47:8 to you?
Please.
Because it kind of falls in line with what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
All right, it's a little long, but I think it'll be good. So
Yeah.
it says, now therefore hear this, you lover of pleasures, who sit securely, who say in your heart, I am, and there is no one beside me. Now I'm going to pause for a second. A lot of people in the New Age use this mantra, I am, I am. You'll hear it in meditations, and it is this concept that I am like God. Okay, so in verse 8 it says, I am, and there is no one beside me. That's what these people are thinking. Even back then, it's still happening today. I shall not sit as a widow or know the loss of children. These two things shall come to you in a moment, in one day. The loss of children and widowhood shall come upon you in full measure, in spite of your many sorceries and the great power of your enchantments. So meaning no matter how much sorcery and witchcraft you do, you cannot stop these bad things from happening to you. You felt secure in your wickedness. You said, no one sees me. Your wisdom and your knowledge led you astray, just like, Gnosticism. You said in your heart, I am, and there is no one beside me. But evil shall come upon you, which you will not know how to charm away. Disaster shall fall upon you, for which you will not be able to atone. And ruin shall come upon you suddenly, of which you know nothing. And I can relate to that. My life became a nightmare. It became shambles. I couldn't recognize my life anymore. I went from having an amazing life to like in the pit of hell. And it happened quite quick. So it's true. And then it continues on in verse 12. Stand fast in your enchantments and your many sorceries, with which you have labored from your youth. Perhaps you will be able to succeed. Perhaps you may inspire terror. You are wearied with your many counsels. And I think with that verse, like, people who go to horoscopes and psychics and mediums and tarot cards and stuff, you're trying to get counsel on your life from all these different avenues, but you become wearied. And then let them stand forth and save you. Those who divide the heavens and who gaze at the stars and who at the new moons make known what shall come upon you. So those are, horoscope readers and so forth.
Right.
Behold, they are like stubble. The fire consumes them. They cannot deliver themselves from the power of the flame. No coal for warming oneself is this, no fire to sit before. Such to you are those with whom you have labored, who have done business with you from your youth. They wander about, each in his own direction. There is no one to save you.
Wow. Thank you for.
I was completely lost. I couldn't save myself. I towards the end, I was under the New Age concept of awakening out of the 3D matrix.
Yeah.
About that.
Yeah.
And the concept is, as we awaken our kundalini energy and open our third eye and receive divine revelation, as long as every human on earth starts doing this, we'll be like little light portals, and we're going to heal the planet with our energies, and we're going to bring these light codes down from, aliens or the heavens or like whatever.
Depends on who you talk to, because it all kind of overlaps, but there's differences, right? Depending on who you're consulting with.
Right. Well, and that's the thing with the New Age is there's no
Right.
there's no New Age Bible. It's all like
Exactly.
taking whatever you feel like. And that's another thing I've had to change was in the New Age, everything's about feeling and just express yourself, which is why you see a lot of like these New Age girls like super sexy and like feeling their like tantra and whatever and Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And since being saved, it's like, no. It's not, nothing is, feelings are so deceptive. Like,
Yeah.
in the Bible, what verse is it where it says, like, who can trust the heart? It's so deceptive.
Yeah. I think that's in Proverbs. I can't remember the exact verse, but that's a great one.
Yeah. And so I've really had to get out of my feelings this year. I mean, I felt a lot of feelings, but I don't make decisions based on feelings anymore. And I make decisions based off of, is this, based off the word of God.
Yeah, great point. And feelings, it's kind of like many other things in the New Age. God gave us feelings for a reason, and they're a gift. But the way when you start to take the gifts that God gives us and kind of twist them, like the New Age does, whether it relates to feelings or kind of like how you were describing at the beginning of that verse with the I am and meditation, the New Age is in the supernatural mysticism is so good at taking something that was meant for good and then just kind of twisting it just a little bit to the left or right, and then all of a sudden it becomes a completely different thing. And that's why it's so deceptive, because there is some truth there, but now that truth has kind of been blended together with something that is hurtful and is not true, because obviously it's a lie. So again, I know I've said it a couple of times, but it just speaks to how deceptive this stuff is, because it's one thing if somebody is coming at you and dressed like like a devil, like wearing the red costume at like Halloween, has the pitchfork, or somebody is dressed up as like a witch at Halloween, and it's very obvious that's supposed to be evil. That's not good. But when you then incorporate like healing aspects or like psychics, I think about like psychics that help solve murder crimes, or find a murderer, or help help the police. It just gets so challenging when you're not firmly rooted in what is true. So I don't think that we can highlight that enough, at how difficult it is unless you're really firmly planted in the truth that's found in God's word, at how to decipher all of this.
Right. And I mean, that's where like the devil is so sneaky. He masquerades as an angel of light. Even within Christianity, there's so much deception. Even in Bible translations, there's deception.
Yeah.
And that's why you have to be extremely vigilant. You have to have a good prayer life. You have to read the Bible and try to find the best version, the best English version that has been well translated from Hebrew and Greek and has had many people. And like, do your research before you just buy any old Bible, because a lot of them will lead you astray. And like, it's so seductive. Like, even Christians are getting led astray with like the Enneagram and word of faith, prosperity gospel stuff. Like, it's a slippery slope into the New Age. And I mean, I can hear it and I pick it up really quick. I can hear bad theology very fast, but to someone who maybe isn't trained in New Age philosophy and Christianity, doesn't know that it's being blended. And so we have to be very vigilant and careful.
One of the things that I think is interesting as it relates to what we're talking about as being, coming from the New Age, is that it seems like a lot of people that were in the New Age, when they were in the New Age and dabbling in these quote healing modalities, it seems like their relationships a lot of times weren't. There was a roller coaster aspect to the relationships. It didn't seem like there was a lot of stability in relationships for people that are in the New Age. And I was one of those people, whether that was, romantic relationships or even friendships. I had several people come and go throughout that period of my life, because I personally think that when you're messing around with what we now know to be demonic, I think it opens up certain doorways into your life that you don't know that you're opening up at that time, and it's creating, it's having these kind of like effects that you have no idea that they're occurring in your personal life, and it's creating this instability. In a lot of times, again, this overlaps with relationships, I think, to our career. So can you kind of go into a little bit, I know you haven't been a Christian for a super long time, but even in that time that you have been a Christian, have you noticed a difference there as it relates to like the stability, like with your relationships or how you view relationships? What has that been like for you?
Well, I've dated a few unsaved people. And since being saved, and I found that even though they might say they love God and believe in God, it's not true. They don't know the true God, because when push comes to shove, they can't hear the gospel. They have a spiritual blindness to it. And I mean, in the Bible, it says to not be unequally yoked. And so that's something that I'm working on, is not dating unbelievers.
Yeah.
I only want a Christian man, a man who's going to read the Bible and follow the word of God, because men who follow their feelings, like they're a mess.
Yeah.
The minute that they get a bad vibe or whatever, like in life, like God created marriage as a holy, sacred union, and it's not easy. And so you're going to get sick of your spouse, and they might annoy you. And so the Bible actually teaches us how to be a good husband and a good wife, and to how to make a marriage work and last for a lifetime. And so if both partners aren't actually reading what God says about marriage and how to have a holy union, then you're going to have, if you have one person who's a Christian, a woman, for example, who wants to submit to her husband, but her husband is sinning, and so it's hard to submit to a man who isn't following the word of God, because he's not being a leader in the home in a holy way. So it creates a really unbalanced dichotomy in the home. And I mean, I dated this one guy, and he said he wanted to marry me, and it felt right, and blah, blah, blah. But he idolizes psychedelics, and he wants to open up this spiritual center and use psychedelics as a way to heal people. And I had tried and tried, I like talk about Bible verses, and he knew my whole story, and he still like couldn't hear. And so one day he was wanting me to open a spiritual center with him. He wanted me to be his business partner. And I said, I'm sorry, because he wanted to do yoga at this spiritual center and stuff. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but I can't, like, I can't participate. Like, I can't be your business partner. Yoga is Hindu, and like that goes against my God. And I don't believe in psychedelics anymore. And he looked at me and he goes, what? So you just think all Hindus are going to hell? And I said, yeah. And not to laugh, that's not funny.
Right.
But his reaction, he was flabbergasted. He was floored, because he's caught up in the love and light movement, where everyone is going to heaven. Okay. And we broke up that day.
Wow.
Because he couldn't handle that I thought that Hindus, they're not the elect for heaven, because they're worshiping false idols, which is, one of the 10 commandments. So anyway, relationships has been a struggle. At my church, there's like one single guy, and I like never even talked to him.
Yeah.
So dating isn't so easy, but I'm figuring out, and I have complete faith that God will bring me the right person at the right time, and it will be made known to me, and it will, so I'm just waiting and letting God do the work rather than me trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and I think it speaks back to what you were talking about before, which is that God doesn't always work exactly like the New Age, which is that things that we want might not happen overnight or on our timing, but God knows what is best for us, and He will provide as long as we continue to pursue Him and His righteousness. He will provide for us the right thing at the right time, and a lot of times that thing that we're looking for, we don't even know. It could be something that we don't even know that we want yet. It could be like in this particular example, I've noticed a lot of times, like in whether it's relationships, again, for example, this example in relationships, you can want something maybe today as we're speaking, but maybe as you continue to become more well versed in the Bible, and you have a little bit more time under your belt as a Christian, maybe you can become a little bit more sanctified, and all of a sudden what you want today, you no longer, like X amount of time down the road, even want anymore. And so God, is someone who is all knowing, has the ability to put off that thing that you're wanting right now and give you something better down the road, if you continue to pursue Him. And so I think that again just speaks to what you're talking about, which is that it might not happen instantaneously what we're looking for, but God has that perfect timing and has the right things set out for us at the right time.
Yeah. And realizing that our goal is to be holy and not to be happy.
Right.
And
100%.
so if we're striving to be holy, then if we're single, then use that as a time to focus more on Him, and being okay with that.
100%. And that leads to one of the last questions I was going to ask you, which was, what would you say to somebody like a skeptic who would look at you and say, well, Kelsey, this has been a really fascinating story, but I there's no way that I can believe in what you're talking about, or this magic stuff. Well, I think part of that answer right there, and when I look at your story, how I would respond is that what you're describing here as it relates to relationships, I just don't see that as being something or a viewpoint that you would have had before you became a Christian. I can't help but think that you probably would not have, you probably would have been more patient with maybe like some of these people that you've been dating, or, not so hesitant to date them. And I think that it shows a real turnaround that would not have happened if you hadn't given your life to Jesus and really committed to His ways. So I think that is one piece of evidence right there, that what we're talking about right here, as it relates to all these fantastic things and these supernatural things, there's something to it, because it's presenting itself in a way that has changed, again, your makeup and how you live your life. So that's kind of how I look at it. But I would love to hear if there's anything else that you would add to somebody who would say that, and just describing how your experiences, have happened and how they've changed who you are.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought I was going to write a book and release it upon my death about my supernatural experiences with the guru. But once the spell was broken and I was released from his sorcery, I was able to communicate what he had done to me and my experiences. And, it's actually cathartic to be able to explain it and not have to just, because I thought when I would publish this book, I would either publish it on my death so I didn't have to deal with any repercussions, or I would publish it as fiction, because truth is stranger than fiction. It's really weird.
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate to that. A lot of the stuff you could, I have a degree in writing, a bachelor's degree. And yeah, I could not have written your story or my story or several other people's stories that I've heard. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's really weird stuff. And it's such a mind trip to like figure it out, like what's happening. And like as more spiritual stuff's happening, and then more and more and more, and then, you know, Jesus was the only one that could save me from it. And it is a crazy story, and I'm not here to like make people believe me, because that is not important for me if you believe some crazy thing that happened to me. But what is important is that you can see how Jesus changed me, right? Like I was going down this path and I've completely turned around and I'm going this way now. And so all the sorcery and witchcraft, you know, it exists. There are Satanists out there who are putting curses on neighborhoods every day, and they spend a lot of time in ceremony cursing people and doing voodoo and doing it all. And so as a Christian, I really urge all of us to wake up. Like, this is spiritual warfare, and you can pretend that it's not happening and it's not real, but actually it is real and it is happening. And Christians need to wake up and start praying and praying over their communities and walking around their communities, praying for their neighbors, praying for protection from spiritual demonic attacks, where they're going to bring, you know, drugs and bad energies into your neighborhood. Like, this stuff is real. It's not a game. And Christians need to suit up with the armor of God, and they need to get on the warpath and start spreading the word and the gospel, and stop being like mediocre, lukewarm Christians. Stop. Like, this is real. Lucifer, the devil, is prowling around day and night, coming after your kids, coming after your spouse, like through entertainment. Like, you go on I can't even turn on Netflix now. I have an aversion to it because of all the witchcraft and sorcery, even in the kids' channels. Like, my kids aren't even allowed in Netflix anymore because it's all witchcraft. It's all witchcraft. It drives me insane. Everything is magic, and they make magic seem so glamorous. And it is the opposite of. It is going to send you to hell. And it's so serious, and people need to wake up. Christians need to hear this stuff, because pretending like it's not real isn't doing anyone a service. So I just encourage everyone to wake up, smell the coffee. Witchcraft is real. Sorcery is real. This isn't just happening in Africa somewhere. No, it's happening around the corner at your neighbor's house who's like doing tarot cards and like whatever. Like, it's happening everywhere. So that's what I have to say about that.
Well, really well said. And do you think then that your old guru then has any inclination as to what he's truly dabbling in?
Yeah, I think he knows who he is. Mm-hmm. I've asked him a few times, like, where do you get your powers from? And he would never tell me. So I don't know. He's getting it from some demonic alien type thing, because I've had an alien experience, which you saw in my testimony. And aliens are demons, by the way. So we don't have to go down that road. But he knows what he's doing. Since I've been saved, he's coming in my dreams, and because I blocked him on my phone, which he called me the very next day after that spell was removed, because I know he knew something had happened. Like, wow. Because there was some kind of like a vampire like thing happening, and he knew that was gone. So he called me. He calls me like once a year, maybe, and he called me that next day.
Wow.
And so where was I going with that? Repeat the question, please.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I was just asking if you understand, if you think that your guru understands like truly what he's doing.
Yeah, so he's been coming into my dreams. He is harassing me in my dreams because I've blocked him on my phone. I've cut all communication with him. I want nothing to do with him. I don't even want to hear his voice, lest I have some kind of sorcery put on me. Like he's blocked. But because he is a sorcerer, he is coming into my dreams and he's tormenting me. And this happened just last week. He was following me around. I kept kicking him out. I took his keys and I threw him like over yonder. And then he would just show up again, and he got really close to me and he was going to grab me. And I just like woke up out of bed and was just like, I'm covered in the blood of Jesus. I put on hymn music, and I have like, because when you come out of the new age, it's not very easy to get rid of these like portals that you had opened, spiritual portals. And so I'm in the process of sanctification right now and closing these things and removing them. But anyway, so I have Bible verses by my bed for deliverance, and I just start reading them out loud, because this guru, he's told stories of him like time traveling. Like, he told a story once of him going from New York to Paris to see his kids and then just like coming back. Like, just moves through time and space. And so sometimes I get like after a dream like that, I'll have a panic or a fear that it's gonna like manifest in my room. But I stay with Jesus. Jesus is, Jesus's name is above everyone else's name, all the other spirits' names, all the other demons' names. He is the one who saves me, and he saves everyone who's willing and who wants to be saved. And he is pure and he's holy, and heaven is so real. Like, it's not in a delusion. Like, heaven is real, and this world is completely corrupted. And I just put all my faith in Jesus. He protects me from all of it. So, and I pray that for everyone else, that you can lean in and trust Jesus as much as I do.
Beautifully said. And I was going to ask you like what you would tell somebody that might be in a similar situation as you, or was in a similar situation. And I think that what you said, I don't think there's anything that you can add to that. And I guess really my last question for you then, just to kind of sum up everything, is, when you look back in the last, several years of your life, and you think about all the experiences that you've had and all the different rocks that you overturned and all the different paths that you took and all the different people that you met and all the different spiritualities that you tried out, just how crazy is it to you, like after all that time, that you are back here, kind of having gone full circle, and now you know the truth as is found in the Word of God, the Bible that was there the whole time, and just how crazy is that to you after all these experiences, that you're now a Christian? Is it still like some days you wake up and you're like, I can't believe that this is all true, like the Bible and Jesus' word?
It's pretty wild. Like, I love Christian music. I don't listen to very little other kind of music. Like, I love Christian music, and that was so not me before. It's wild, but everything is orchestrated by God. And I think I went through all of that, all those experiences and all the suffering that happened because of it. Well, for one, I was doing it my way. I was using my will, not God's will. And so whenever you do it your way, not God's way, you're going to crash and burn eventually. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. But I think there's a reason for it. And I think it's for me to be able to spread the gospel in a way that a lot of other people can't.
I love that. I agree with you, because as you said also before, that there are people that, might have been Christian for a long period of time, a lot longer than you or I have, but they haven't been through these experiences. Many Christians haven't been through these experiences. And I think that one of the best ways that you can reach other people is to have endured many of the things that they have endured as it relates to the new age, or I guess whatever it is that they're going through. And so I 100% believe in what you're saying, that God has a pathway laid out for you, and this is all in his perfect timing, and he knew exactly when it was going to the opportunity was going to be the right opportunity for you to take in spreading his word. And I'm just so thankful that you, after all these years, have been able to seize on that opportunity and use, what the enemy meant for harm for good, and deliver it in a way that only you can deliver the message. And no, there are many people out there that have PhDs or whatever, or are really well versed in the Bible, but there's somebody out there right now that needs to hear Kelsey's story as only Kelsey can describe it, and you can only meet them where they're at right now because you're so new out of the new age. And I think that if that person were to have heard about Jesus through somebody else, maybe somebody that's been preaching for 30 years, I don't think it would be as effective. So I really identify with what you're saying, and I really appreciate your story, and I'm so thankful for everything that you've shared with us today. And I really, again, am so thankful that you came on the podcast and shared your insights and your story with me and our listeners. I think it's going to be really, really powerful.
Well, thanks for having me. And I do pray that this podcast will bless a lot of people.
Well, that's the show this week, everybody. Before we go, I just wanted to inform you of Kelsey's website. It's newagerecoveryinchrist.com. There you can find all the things that she's doing to help people that are coming out of the new age. She has prayer support, deliverance support, and she also does one-on-one coaching as well for people that are coming out of the new age. A lot of great resources there. She also runs the New Age .recovery Instagram page. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that, just on Instagram at newage.recovery. Also has a Facebook page, New Age Recovery in Christ. A lot of really good information at both those social media sites, all things from New Age to Christianity there. I think that if you are having any interest in what we talked about today, or coming out of the New Age and finding Christ and truth, I think you would really appreciate all of the information and the resources that she has over on her social media sites. And if you have your own New Age to Christianity testimony, we would love to share that on the podcast. So please submit your video testimony or written testimony to spiritanswerspodcast@gmail.com. We would love to have you on the program and share the truth and share your story. Additionally, just want to remind you, we have a Facebook group. It's just called Spirit Answers. There you can catch sneak peeks of next week's episode, interact with many of the guests that we have on the show, as well as submit prayer requests. We have got a lot of really good prayer support going on over there. So we'd love to have you over there. And just want to remind you as well that I know that there's a lot of people that are asking what they can do to help people that are currently in the New Age movement, what they can do to help them see the truth. I think sharing a podcast like this would be really beneficial, or sharing some of the other shows that we've had. So I just want to remind you, if you know anybody that you think could benefit from this information, this podcast, please share it with them. I think that would do a lot to kind of give them something to think about, a new vantage point to kind of think about what it is that they're doing, and hopefully plant a seed. Lastly, maybe you're the person that is still kind of on the fence with this whole God thing. And if that's you, I would ask you to ask God to reveal himself to you in a personal way, in a way that would make sense to you. And I would also ask you to do one other thing. Ask him to guide and direct your steps. I think that you'll find that as you do those two things, you'll kind of start to be able to connect the dots. And I think that, if I had to put money on it, that God will show himself to you in a way that is, like I said, personal and special to you. And I would ask that you do this for over a period of time and to not give up. And I truly think that you're going to have some great results with that. I know that he loves you and he wants to be in your life. And there really is nothing like having a relationship with the creator of the physical and the spiritual with you at all times. So I just want to thank you again for tuning in today. I really, really appreciate your time. And I really appreciate all that you do to support the podcast. And I hope that you have a great week. I will see you next week on Spirit Answers Podcast. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.